Welcome to All Things Social Security. My name is Stephanie Joy of Joy Disability. I am a Social Security disability attorney, and I would like to invite you to watch our daily video tips on the Social Security disability and SSI claims process each day at the new time of noon Eastern Standard Time here on YouTube on this channel. And on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have our live Q&A live stream. So you are welcome to join that as well. Ask your questions, get there on time, and you'll be one of the first answered. Thanks so much and have a great day. Enjoy the video. Hi, Jeanette. I had psych evaluation, but not a physical exam from SSD yet. Is that normal? Well, that would depend. Either you don't have a physical case, but it sounds like you do because you're surprised that they haven't done that yet. I don't know. I don't want to get hopeful, but if your physical stuff spells out, let me just give a hypothetical here. Let's say your physical stuff spells out that you can't do more than sedentary work. And let's say you are over 50, under 55, or even over 55. So your physical stuff is pretty clear just from your treating records. So they already know, they've already decided that there's enough information to figure out your RFC. And let's say you had a high-end, high-skilled job, but that was sedentary. It was a sedentary high-skilled job. Well, just because you're relegated to sedentary doesn't knock out that job, correct? But what if you also have significant, not totally limiting anxiety, but you have enough where it really distracts you. You get a little forgetful because when we're filled with anxiety, our heads are filled with stuff. It's very hard to retain other stuff, apply it properly, and make good decisions and stuff like that. So if you have like a kind of a durational anxiety issue, which could have developed just because of the fact of your impairments and loss of job or whatever, it doesn't have to be a mental illness that came up organically or mental condition, whichever way you want to look at it. So if you can prove that your mental state right now includes some moderate anxiety that damages your concentration and maybe your retention and your ability to really kind of think on your feet without being a little bit that in itself could be the thing that keeps you from doing that high-skilled sedentary job that you could otherwise do, despite the fact that you can't do a lighter, heavier job now because you have physical impairments. But you were able to do the sedentary. So that psych eval would be because either you didn't have psych treatment, but you asserted maybe concentration issues on your application or your function report where it's asked, or they saw it alluded to in your medical records, even if you weren't talking about it, or they think they see it in there, but it's kind of borderline. So they want to double check and make sure and have their psych eval person review you, give you a CE to see. But I'm just giving you a scenario of which kind of case having that distractibility is going to be so important for. If you are only an unskilled worker before in your past relevant work period, you don't really need to prove that you have poor concentration or whatever, because there's no transferability of skills anyway, because they can only come if you had a skilled or semi-skilled job. And then you have to prove that you can't do skilled or semi-skilled. So it can be normal. I mean, there's no normal. Every case is different on how they decide what to do. Sometimes, it could even be that they're going to schedule a physical and they just didn't get around to it. But that's usually they come together. So I don't know what your situation is, but fingers crossed for you, Jeanette, because it really varies on the case and what that little needle threading is required for you to prevail. So over 50, it's super, super important. I would almost say, okay, so when he said that age won't help with a mental disability case, that's true up until the age of 50, in which case it might be able to help you because it might make you meet a grid. Some people assume that a grid, like Flynn, I'm gridding. People, there's age 50 to 54 grid rules. There is a different one for age 55 to 60. There's a difference. Awesome comment by Comet. I just wanted to respond verbally because I did a little reply back and, but this might be easier for more people to actually get their hands on. Okay, so he or she, Comet, shared that other commenters, and by the way, this was in response to the video about age discrimination as a factor in employment and in Social Security disability. So this fine viewer said that he'd heard from commenters that age won't help with a mental disability case and that the grid rules only apply to physical disabilities. Is this true? Not really. Okay. So as I responded, and let me see if I can open this up. when we are over 50, all right, that would be age, and we have a claim, the grids, they get structured in terms of if you're limited to sedentary, if you're limited to light, if you're limited to medium, heavy, right? And it goes by age. So it's like 60-year-olds that are limited to sedentary, 60 or 55 and 50. So it goes by exertional level, physical, that's all physical, and age. And where does mental health fit in? Mental health fits in here. And this is not unusual. I deal with this in almost every over 50 case I have, if the shoe fits. There is a thing in the grids. One of the things you have to prove, remember, you have to prove that you're unable to do your prior work. Right now, we have that beautiful 5-year window for that. It used to be 15. There's many reasons why one can't do the prior work. It could be because they mentally can't do it anymore, because they have mental impairments, and the symptoms show that they can't do that to that satisfactory level required by that job. And by the way, skilled and semi-skilled work is where this is critical. If you were an unskilled worker in your prior work, if those jobs were categorized as unskilled, you don't need to worry about this. You still have to prove the other things, but not so much this one. If you were a semi-skilled or skilled worker, which is probably the majority of jobs, you have to prove, A, you can't do your prior work, your prior job for whatever reason. You also have to prove that those skills, those semi-skilled or skilled skills that you earned from that job or from education, but usually it's from the job because our education is usually way in the past and they don't really take it. They smartly don't take it into consideration very much. You have to prove that you can't, those transferable skills you have, and they're going to figure out what those are from that job, put it into the job that you can physically do. So if you're down to sedentary or light, depending on the age you're at when you're applying these grids, and you can transfer that knowledge or that skill that you have from that prior work to this other job that's less exertional because, the physical wouldn't let you do it, for instance, and or the mental. But if you can't transfer if there are transferable skills, which semi-skilled and skilled, there's probably going to be transferable skills, and you cannot transfer them, or they are not transferable, some by their nature, even though their skills are not transferable. If they are transferable, and you, for mental reasons, it could be low-level anxiety that just distracts you enough to eliminate, really being able to grip on that newer job, then you have to be able to prove that you can't transfer those skills. How you can prove that? The mental, right? So over 50, it's super, super important. I would almost say, okay, so when he said that age won't help with a mental disability case, that's true up until the age of 50, in which case it might be able to help you because it might make you meet a grid. Some people assume that a grid, I'm over 50, I'm in like Flynn, I'm gridding. People, there's age 50 to 54 grid rules. There is a different one for age 55 to 60. There's a difference. Obviously, 50 to 54 is not as, I'm going to say the word lenient for lack of a better term. There's differences. If just meeting an age was the factor, there wouldn't be different rules. And yeah, I am talking about the SSA recognizing that age is a factor. The verbiage he or she used was ability to learn. That is, I think that's an appropriate way to put it. Its ability to learn, its ability to adjust to other work, its ability to transfer those skills that we're talking about, the ones you already learned, right? So that's where it's really important. It is so not unusual for a person who suddenly has to change careers to have, and not working right now in their old job. They're going broke. They're worrying about their mortgage. They're eating up their 401k if they were lucky enough to have one, or any other savings they had. The marriage is struggling if they were married. I mean, they're worried about the kids. Now they can't send their kids to college. I mean, you want to talk about how disorders can develop. And I'm not a mental health professional, but I see it all the time where, believe me, we all know what it's like to have anxiety. There's healthy anxiety that is a normal response. And then it's when we let it overwhelm us. And of course, it doesn't help us in any way, right? And it is not unusual for someone who's been out of work for a year to be mind racing at night, insomnia now because they can't think straight. They're distracted during the day. They're irritable as all get out. They're having mood swings now. So don't be shocked to know that a perfectly mentally stellar person before they became disabled might start tweaking a little bit after. And it's when you get that proof that this whole thing about age being a factor with mental health is definitely so. Okay. I also wanted to see if there was one more thing I wanted to mention. No. All right. So that's it. So I just wanted to put that into a little verbal. I'll attach the video that this is in response to. And you could see the very great question. I really appreciate it because it is something people need to know. I see a lot of people, wing this on their own, or they decide they are going to get someone on board and they're like, well, I'm going to grid out, right? I mean, I'm 57. I'm like, not so fast, Bucky. Not necessarily. It means you have a greater opportunity that you do not have before age 50. I mean, you guys hear me talk all the time about the woes of the younger crowd. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, heartbreaking, heartbreaking. Not because I don't understand why the law is the way it is. I do. And I'm not even saying I disagree with it. Perhaps it can be tweaked a little bit better. But it is heartbreaking when you know someone is disabled and it's going to be very hard to prove. Usually it's because their evidence is lacking or they haven't been proactive. I will say that. Or they misunderstand what it means to not be able to work. They failed at a few jobs and only worked there for 8 months each, and they think that's a failure. That's not actually a failure. So it's the misunderstanding of what it means to not be able to perform a job. It's the misunderstanding that if I can't do these 3 jobs and those are the ones I'm used to, then I'm disabled. None of that's true. Okay, but that's all different stuff for a different day. But I wanted to get onto this grid thing. And age is a huge factor with the mental disability. The mental disability case is going to be relying on the grid. So almost my answer is completely opposite of what these commentators said. They can come at me if they want, perfectly fine. But I'm thinking maybe it's some people who are maybe they were just making generalities. Maybe they were talking to the under 50 crowd. There's something that was amiss here because that is extremely not true. In fact, it's the exact opposite. That's why the grids are so important. They're so incredibly important. Okay, tally ho, guys. I just had to get that out there. Bye now.